Oh, hi, Steve.
Oh, Sandy's joining us.
Looked like it had a little monster on the corner there. It was very interesting.
Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Bettina.
Thank
You
you
were
for
also this
setting this
afternoon,
up.
Bettina.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we're going to try to stream this Zoom onto Facebook Live as well. So let me get that going. And for those of you who are joining in, if you could mute yourself so that we can not have a lot of background chatter, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So Mayor Harmon, how's everything in your world today?
Actually, been a pretty good day, all things considered. Just left an emergencies. Well, it's a city council meeting that is also, we have a disaster council. It's the same group of people that are on the city council that are on the disaster council, and it's not as cool. That sounds like something out of a superhero film, but just getting an update from the city manager and having a discussion about what's going on with COVID specifically and all the problems that we're trying to solve. So, but it's been a good day.
Well, it looks like we've got a lot of people on the Zoom today, so that's exciting and not surprising because we know that so many people care so deeply about our beautiful downtown. So thanks to everybody for taking the time. I was just wandering around looking at the way that downtown has been completely transformed over the last couple of days. The city staff has just been sprinting, putting out really incredible. The dining that was inside is now outside in the streets and sidewalks. And I'm a little out of breath because I just ran over here from Mission Plaza, where there are tables and chairs set up for you to picnic. And Farm Supply donated several dozen trees and plants. And it's this beautiful umbrella-filled kind of destination. It's really, really beautiful. So there are umbrellas and you can get some food from a local restaurant and take your takeout and have a picnic in the plaza. So it's pretty cool.
On this emergency meeting we just had, I just saw the photo of that, and it looked, from the photo anyway, it looked beautiful. So I have been really excited by the fluidity and the flexibility of the city staff. Government, sometimes rightfully so, gets a bad rap for being incredibly sluggish, right? And bureaucracy can be challenging to navigate and doesn't have a great reputation for being able to pivot. And I think that's actually been one of the real upsides of this moment, is that it's created such an extreme situation that it's sort of recreating in some way, or re-envisioning what government can do. And so I'm proud of the staff for getting out there and really hustling and in response to people's concerns. And none of it's perfect, right? So it's all about, to me, like progress and not perfection, but it's been exciting to see all of that.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you take the lead since
Okay.
you invited me to this conversation today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bettina, and for everyone for being on this call. I guess my hope would be, if it's wanted and feels supportive, that this could be the first of a series of these types of gatherings. Just want to start by saying so many things. First of all, obviously this is an unprecedented challenge, and I think, everyone from electeds to business owners to everyone is really striving to do the best that we can, and we don't always know exactly what that is, but I think we're all learning. And I am wanting also to just make sure that it's really clear to business owners in the downtown and otherwise that feel free, of course, to reach out to me anytime. I feel like my accessibility is pretty strong. And so you can always email me at my city email, which you can find easily on the website, but it's hharmon@slowcity.org. If you have an idea or a concern or anything like that. And, just by way of example, our Open Slow program is and was an attempt to try and navigate and invite a more dynamic, vital situation in the downtown. So we were closing streets, as most of you I'm sure know, and I'm sure as most of you would also might say, is because this is what we heard, that wasn't working for everybody, right? And so we heard that information and are no longer closing down the streets and are instead focusing on permanent or semi-permanent parklets for folks to have a more outside experience to help them continue on with their businesses. So I know I can only speak for myself, but I feel like my colleagues and the staff are all really open to that kind of feedback. So tonight, my intention was actually not to do most of the talking, but instead to do most of the listening, to really hear from you. What are your challenges? What are you hoping for? What needs to happen? And so really want to hear that. And sometimes what's hard is that local governments, city government is not necessarily the perfect spot to address those, but I want to hear them no matter who is sort of the right place to advocate for those, so that I can either take it on myself and or help folks know where the right level of governance is to advocate for those solution pieces. And so I would hope that this would kind of blossom into an open dialogue and conversation about what's happening downtown and what would be more helpful. I have heard from several folks that are not in the downtown, that don't have businesses in the downtown, like, why so much focus on the downtown? And so maybe I'll just briefly speak to that, and that we, fully recognize that the downtown is the heart of the city of San Luis Obispo, on a personal and emotional level, but certainly on an economic level. And getting through this while maintaining the vitality of the downtown is going to be one of the biggest challenges the city has ever faced. And so downtown vitality was already a major city goal, and I'm grateful for that. And we all fully recognize the importance of the specificity of the businesses in the downtown, while we're also trying to do our level best for all the other businesses throughout our community that have been impacted, especially impacted by this recent sort of step back in terms of opening. And so, with that, I would love to hear for folks to just either ask a question or maybe just share some stories. Maybe let's start with that. I think, do I see you, Greg? Or whoever is out there, if you wouldn't, maybe we should start by sharing just a few brief stories about what people are experiencing, because I think storytelling is so helpful to really imparting the depth of what's actually happening, what people are experiencing. So Greg, only because I know you so well, would you mind, I know I'm inviting you to start just kind of sharing maybe briefly what your experience has been so far, and what maybe some of your struggles are, and maybe some of your successes, if you feel comfortable. And then just unmute yourself.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. I guess you hear me now. Yeah.
Yes.
The parklet, you'll excuse my language, saved my ass. It has been, after the first few days, it's been filled constantly. Because nobody's told me no, I put tables on the sidewalk. And guess what happened to those too? It filled up right away. And make no mistake, our customers, it's not just us, our customers are scared. I can count on one hand the amount of people I know that are eating my restaurant. Everybody else are tourists. And I'm Big Sky Cafe, by the way, for whoever just asked that question. We have a double-edged sword. One, to feed people, and that's, those of you who know me know that's my joy. The other is to keep that business going, because it is my retirement plan. I'm only going to be around for probably 20 or 30 more years, and I'd like to spend half of it feeding people. The barriers and stuff that I see going up is, in my opinion, an excellent answer. The idea of having the streets closed down was a great idea, but it didn't pan out, like you said earlier. I think that turning open spaces into retail and dining spaces is probably be in our best interest for the long run. I've got, with all this we've been going through, and I'm going to wrap it up real quick. With all this we've been going through, Bettina, you, Holly, or excuse me, Heidi, I keep getting you mixed up with Holly I work with. And the whole city program has been super effective. And I don't want to just blow smoke or anything like that, but it's really been helpful. And thank you. That's the end of my spiel.
Thank you, Greg. When you said your customers are scared, you mean folks that live here locally have a fear of getting sick, and so they're opting out of coming?
That's pretty much what I'm seeing. I'm feeding a lot of people, but I've got 25 years of experience and people hearing about us and coming through. Historically, my business is 70% locals and 30% tourists. And I can tell you what, right now, it's definitely a flip side. I see maybe a dozen people a day that I know and that say, "Hey, Greg." And the rest of the people are, "Oh my God, I've never been here and it's wonderful." So yeah, the customer mix has certainly changed. And those of you who know me know I'm a real positive guy, and I try to look on the sunny side, and but God's honest truth, I'm scared now. You know, I've gotten fearful to the point where I've taken it upon myself to get 2 tests. Both have, well, the first one came back negative and the other one I'll get in 3 or 4 days. And I got to figure, a guy like me who's a glass half full or 3/4 full guy, if I'm starting to get scared, I got to imagine that most of our other San Luis Obispans are getting scared as well. That's just my take there.
Yeah, so maybe we can have, either in the context of this call tonight, or folks can email me about that piece. You know, is there something, is that just part of the culture? Obviously, there's a lot of fear in the culture in general, and some of it is warranted for sure. But is there something that we could do as a city to help mitigate some of that? You know, it seems like the mask wearing, although has been, I think, surprisingly and unfortunately controversial, also though creates a sense of more safety. So hopefully that helps facilitate a more safe way of folks being out. And then the outside piece, which it seems like all the science so far is really suggesting strongly that being outside in open air, especially in the heat, which we're lucky to have these nice days, really helps to not contract COVID. So if there are suggestions, we can either share on the call or in the chat, or to me personally, about if there is a way that we can strike that balance between making sure that folks in San Luis Obispo know that to take this seriously and that there is a concern, and also to create a level of safety that invites them to still participate in the downtown. That's kind of a magic process that I'm totally open to. Bettina, were there some hands raised?
I don't see any hands at this time. Oh, yes, I do see a hand.
Okay.
Forgive me. Sloan, it looks like you would like to speak. Can you tell us who you are and why you're joining us on the call today, Sloan?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Mayor Harmon.
Hi.
It's nice to officially meet you. My name's Sloan. I'm not a business owner downtown, but I'm a resident of Higuera Street. I live above Hans Gallery, and yes, there are apartments up here. So I felt that it was necessary to join this meeting, one, to introduce myself to the neighborhood of the wonderful businesses that are here in SLO. One of the reasons I chose to rent here is because I love SLO and I love the downtown. And I think you guys are really the heart and soul of San Luis Obispo in many ways, as the mayor said. You know, I wanted to join this meeting because even though there's not many of us there that live in the actual downtown core area, I felt that we needed a seat at the table. From the experience, I understand that the street closure was it was a cool idea, and I'm an urban designer by discipline, and that's my job as well in many ways. So whenever there's more walkability, more bikeability, I'm all for it. I like that. But for the residents, the street closure made it hard for us to run some essential errands, which unfortunately sometimes require a car. There are two of us that live here. We're a one-car household. We do our best to not drive as much, and we mitigate the parking situation as much as we can because we don't have a place to park. Not that we really want one, but unfortunately, we're just not there yet as a city to where we can walk to get our groceries to stock up, or we can bike, but it's still a little bit cumbersome. It's just not, the network is not fully there yet. So when the street closure came in, we thought it was a good idea, but all of a sudden we couldn't get groceries to our apartment, which again, I want to stress that we felt that the city was had the right intentions for doing so. I was in favor of it. I was in favor of the social distancing aspect of it, but I felt like us residents got a little blindsided. And again, I know there's not a lot of us around here. I have 2 neighbors in this building, and that's about it. But I do know there are other apartments in the building, and I think we just need to be, we need to at least be notified and at least have a seat at the table, because we want to enjoy downtown too, and we want the businesses to thrive too. So that's why I'm here, and I wanted to just make that comment. That was the difficulty that we had. I think the parklet idea is a great idea. The transportation situation is a much more nuanced conversation that goes well beyond here. But I wanted to offer my thoughts and just say, hi, I'm here.
Well, I'm so glad that you did, because one of the things we know about downtown vitality in general is that residents are key to that, right? And so that's been a mistake that some other cities have made, is not cultivating residents in the downtown, and that has been detrimental to the overall downtown vitality. So you are really important and key to that. So thank you for that. And I hear what you're saying. You're right. When I think of downtown vitality, I'm not necessarily thinking of residents, right? I'm thinking of the businesses. So a couple things come to mind. One, I'm guessing Bettina might have some insight onto where you might fit into the downtown conversation specifically. Also, we have e-notifications that you can sign up for at the city. So that would help you get more immediate notifications about what's happening so that you can play a more active role. So we didn't necessarily ask in this particular case. So normally the city of San Luis Obispo has so much community engagement that actually it can be a real barrier to action. So we do a ton of community engagement normally, but in this unique circumstance, we haven't been doing that as much, right? Because there's this sense of urgency. And, so just in the last couple of days, for example, with the new setbacks that we've taken, step backs, we were getting calls from people saying that they were considering closing the very next day, like closing forever, basically. So there was such a strong sense of urgency to try and create the parklets and all of that, that you're right, like the residents may have gotten missed in this conversation. So there's an opportunity to do better there. And so I'll have to think about exactly, you can sign up for the e-notifications, and always, like I said, you can always email me or the whole city council right away if you feel like, whoa, this isn't feeling right. And maybe as we get through this situation, as we get more residents in the downtown, it might be something that Downtown Slow might consider taking on as a sort of subsection of the work that they're doing, potentially, to be able to advocate and include the voices of residents, maybe more proactively. And like I said, everybody concurred basically with what you're saying, is that the closures of the streets did not work. We are about to close down one lane of traffic on Higuera, the far right lane, I believe, and make that both a bike lane, and also the bike lane is key, but also to be able to push out the sidewalk to have more parklets and outside dining and just outside opportunities in general. But we are not planning on closing down the downtown to car traffic. And you're right, the transportation situation in general is a big conversation, because we are, like all cities are, moving away from car-centric decision-making. And that creates a little, we're in the transition where we sort of have to commit to policies like that, even though our infrastructure isn't fully prepared to deal with that. So it's no doubt bumpy and not ideal. We just had a conversation with some of the hoteliers in the downtown. I think that was yesterday. They also didn't like the street closures, but they were actually fine with the removal of a lot of the parking in the downtown. One of the things about parking that we know is that we actually have plenty of parking in the parking structures, even in normal times, but especially now, the parking structures are way underparked. And so part of this is also creating a culture shift and doing some more messaging and education about, don't come into the downtown and expect to park right in front of where you'd like to go, right? Just like when you go to Santa Barbara and you go to State Street, there's no parking whatsoever on State Street. And so, and in a lot of other communities as well. So we need to be able to have that's a continued conversation with people about parking and setting an expectation. And just today too, I reached out to the guy who runs the bike rickshaw. And so get him and some of his folks into the downtown to help also just create another way to get around, that kind of goes with the new vibe that we're creating in the downtown, of a lot of outside kind of cafe styles too. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I do think the downtown resident is key to this conversation. So nice to meet you, and thanks for coming.
I'd love
Thank
to
you.
chime in here and also say, Sloan, good to see you. You and I have had a couple of conversations, and for those of you who might not be part of the downtown, so Downtown Slow is a nonprofit organization that partners with the city, and we represent businesses, but we also represent anybody who cares about the downtown. So a lot of the initiatives that are coming out right now in response to COVID are in some ways things that were happening behind the scenes already, but they were just going to take a lot longer to implement. So funnily enough, actually, right before we went into the shutdown, our organization was looking at doing a new strategic plan, and including residents was a big part of that work. We went through a process that was ultimately unsuccessful last year to form a property business improvement district. And that would have been a coalition of property owners in the downtown. And one of the things that we learned from that process was that there are more residents who want representation, who have very important points of view, and can be really helpful for us in terms of trying to recruit the kinds of businesses and advocating for the types of services that are needed. So we'll look at continuing to do that. And if any of you are on the call right now, Downtown Business Association has weekly calls on Monday mornings, and those are open to you as well. So if you want to email me, I'd be happy to send you the link, and we'd love to have you join.
Yeah, and I was kind of just glancing in the chat and seeing someone talking about, maybe it was you, Bettina, I don't know. There's a long way to go in the downtown in terms of really supporting residents too. And I am really excited for a day when we have, you know, a thriving downtown where we have visitors, local folks, and residents that live in the downtown. And like this, I feel like this like magical marketplace, right? Where if people can pick up essentials and maybe some really unique food items and stuff like that, and just sort of, you know, stay in the downtown to some extent. I've always kind of wanted Sandy's to transition into that bodega kind of local grocery store kind of place. So that's the future that I'm wanting. I saw someone else on
And I
the,
also, can I just chime in and say
yeah.
that there is, I go to a lot of, well, not a lot anymore, but I like to attend conferences, and we're part of the International Downtown Association, as well as the National Main Street Association. And whenever we go to these conferences, every city is looking for ways to bring grocery stores into their downtown. And the way that this is possible is when you have the numbers of residents. So it's the corporate decisions that get made. Like if we wanted a Trader Joe's or something downtown, they have corporate offices where they run the numbers, and it's based on exactly how many residents there are for that specific type of store. So some of the construction projects that are currently coming into the downtown, and there are many that offer residential, are going to be part of like defining the metrics so that maybe we can entice more of those types of activities in the future.
Yeah, that's great. I saw someone in the chat, Bettina, I don't know if she raised her hand, but she did say she wanted to speak.
Oh yes, we've got Kira Cumberland. Did you want to speak to her? Kira, are you there?
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me? Thanks.
Yeah.
Mayor Harmon, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
So I'm the owner of Pilates Collective Slow. We have 2 locations. We're slightly outside of downtown on Santa Barbara and also on Monterey Street. The biggest issue that we're having is really sort of like lease negotiation / cancellation rent, rent in general. A little bit of our personal story, and this might ring true to some other businesses, is with gyms, a Pilates studio, fitness studio, we've been mandated to close our doors now twice. And we're able to run virtual services. We don't have to, right? A lot of gyms that might not relate to them, but in our particular Pilates studio, virtual sessions have become an okay option for us. We run private sessions virtually as well as classes virtually. And the way that I think of that is sort of like takeout for restaurants, right? Like it's a different service that maybe people didn't look at first, but when it's the only option, they're going to take takeout or they're going to take virtual Pilates. And so it's been fine for us. And in fact, I've been really proud of the things that we've done, but we're only making a percentage of our revenue as originally sort of contracted, thought about, it's just not the same. And I'm meeting resistance from our landlords to have any lease negotiation. I think what is the most challenging part is that when you talk to colleagues and they're not having issues, maybe like they're coming together with their landlord and they're saying this is beneficial for both of us. And then if you're in a position that that's not the case, there's not any that I'm finding, and my purpose is to know if maybe you've got some notes for us on where to go. When you find there's not a blanket mandate or an order. And the order that was originally in the first time was sort of like, you can't be evicted. Your landlord can't evict you. Well, instead, we're running a total, right? Some of our rent has been deferred, which was great for a 4-month shutdown, I think. Not for all businesses, but okay, I could probably defer some of my rent for 4 months. We can make that up over the next 10 years. But now in what might be an 8-month or a 6-month, now it's really becoming, this isn't financially feasible. And there's great legal arguments on both sides. And I'm an attorney actually, and I understand that. But I also wonder, how do we avoid going to court? How do we avoid the games? And that's where I'm trying to understand if maybe some cities or a statewide, if we're hearing or understanding that there might be some way that we can enter this all together. And that way you can tell your landlord, hey, this isn't just me, we're all in this together. I don't know if you have any ideas about that or the rest of the community on here.
Well, I have a couple ideas. One, obviously you're not alone, right? And so this is a huge problem. And now that rents are coming due, we're all going to be facing that. And also, there's been this, I'm going to call it sort of an artificial lift for the last few months with the PPP and the eviction moratorium and the extra, so to speak, unemployment, and all of these mechanisms that were created initially have been lifting us through this, as they are meant to do, and rightly so. But now the bottom feels like it's about to fall out, and now what are we going to do? So it seems that, the federal government should be stepping up and filling in those gaps, starting with that. And so my guess and my hope would be that conversation is happening right now, as it's become clear for many states and really the whole country, that we are in this for the long game. And I don't think it's politicized to say that the federal government really dropped the ball on this from the beginning. And so they hold a lot of responsibility in terms of people like you, specifically you losing your business because of that ball being dropped. That's real. And so they need to step up and take responsibility. I'm a big fan, to the extent that I understand it from the beginning, of the idea that there could be a mechanism created where the land, the home, or in your case, the business, the building owner has a mortgage moratorium for, let's say, even the next year, because I think at this point we're looking at a year's worth of challenges, right? Can we create a mechanism where that person doesn't have to pay their mortgage for the next year? Now, true, that would get tacked on to the end of their mortgage 10, 20 years from now, but hopefully 10, 20 years from now, things would be much more recovered and better and vital, and they would still be getting that rent then. That allows them to have the relief, that creates the relief for you. That, to me, of all the legal mechanisms that I've heard of, that seems like that makes the most sense for everyone. Because, if I'm a landlord of any type, I know landlords are getting slammed too, right? And, they're about to lose a ton of their tenants, residential and commercial, both. So that mechanism, to me, seems like the thing that we all should be advocating for. I think it causes the least amount of harm for folks. In the meantime, and barring that, I would suggest that you reach out to an organization called Slow Solutions. They have a relationship with the city. And so my understanding is that their services would be free to you. And this is the exact kind of thing that they help people negotiate, are these types of tough conversations. I mean, you're an attorney, so you're probably pretty good at it yourself. And though, these things are difficult. So they have an expertise in mitigating or helping people have those conversations. I've looked into these things at the local level. And again, being an attorney, you would probably understand this too. You can get into takings issues, right? If we as a city were to say, to just do, let's say, a rent moratorium, right? Then we get in a situation we were having illegal takings from those commercial building owners, and that doesn't work. So those are the things that seem like the most viable options. I mean, the tough part is this is such a huge systemic challenge. It's going to take a huge systemic issue, and that gets way above me, which means that we all have to sort of join together to truly advocate for these things at the state and the federal level. And that's true about a lot of issues too, which is hard for people because they don't necessarily want to hear that, because obviously if this is a state or federal level issue, it starts to feel impossible. It starts to feel like we can't have impact. But we know that in this moment, there are millions of people just like you in this situation. So I always want to invite that in, because not only is it true, but because there's power in that. Like, let's start looking at who's already organizing on this, because I'm certain there are people already organizing on this, and let's see what we can do. When something's above my jurisdiction, so to speak, that doesn't mean I can't play a role either, though. I can be a huge advocate, and I've been an advocate on some pretty big issues and have had great success. So I'm 100% committed to advocating on this issue for business owners. And I'm also very concerned about our residents too. We are over 60% residents here in terms of our residents, or renters, excuse me, in terms of our residents here. So I'm very concerned that we have a whole community of people that are about to not be able to stay in their homes. And that's a concern. And it's that resident piece, and maybe the business piece too, but the resident piece more, I'm really concerned, because I think that San Luis Obispo housing is going to go up even more in the context of COVID. And maybe you've all already thought about this, but the reason being, if you don't have to go to work, why would you live in a place that you don't really love? If you are working for a big corporation like Twitter, for example, who's basically said to their employees, here's, you're making $200, $300, $400,000 a year. We're no longer going to ask you to come to work, maybe ever. Well, maybe you don't want to live in the congested Bay. You'd want to come here to live. So all of that is very concerning for me. And so we definitely need policies to help keep people in their homes. So that's not a perfect answer, but those are some of the things I've been thinking about. And you can definitely reach out to me personally, and we can keep this conversation going. And if you want to take a little bit of time, if you have the capacity to figure out where I can play a role in terms of advocacy, I will absolutely do that.
And it just feels good being on the call, right? In my own business, I've been looking at these problems and solutions sort of by myself and feeling like, am I the only one going through this, right? That people are showing up and doing such a good job at their businesses, and you think maybe it's just me. So it's nice to be here, and there's probably going to be some good relationships built as we continue to go forward. And like you said, we're stronger together, and it also affects residents. So this is great for me. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that. There's obviously a lot of isolation right now, and there is sort of this spirit that is good, right? That we're going to rise above and we're going to get through this and all of that. But let's not let that positive attitude and orientation keep us from also saying, hey, I'll just speak for myself personally. This has been the hardest 6 months of my life. I'm sure it's the same for a lot of you too. And then, but then being in a leadership position where there's so much ambiguity and there's so much division and so much rage, anger, attacking, all of it, it has been almost, I feel like almost more than I can handle. And maybe you're feeling that same thing, right? So yes, like on social media in particular, right? I feel committed to presenting a very positive, constructive vision, but don't think for a second, that doesn't mean that I'm not over here, in a puddle of tears thinking this is terrible and I hate this, and just so frustrated, mad at myself, mad at others, like all of those feelings, So I think it's crucial that we create these spaces to have these really real conversations, because in that real discussion, that's where the solutions can be, that's where we can start to really collaborate. So yeah, thanks for being real.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm not seeing any other hands, but I did want to speak maybe briefly to the topic of local businesses being a priority in the downtown. This is something that we talk about quite a bit, and we, Mayor Harmon, we may actually have some different opinions on this a little bit.
Okay.
I am a believer that all of the people who work in all of the downtown businesses are local. So those are real jobs that create real paychecks for people who participate in our economy and are part of our friendship groups and our families. So while I am absolutely a proponent of shopping local, I'm not quite the let's only buy oats from the farmer that lives next door kind of school of thought. So just putting that out there. I actually have a lot of faith that the local business community is going to come out of this a little bit stronger, and here's why. we, prior to all of this, we do a cataloging of all of the new businesses that open in the downtown. And over the calendar year of 2019, there were more than 40 businesses that opened downtown. And what was really astonishing to me is that more than 25 of them were locally owned. So I think sometimes when you come downtown and you see some of the big flagship stores, it might seem like they're not locally owned, but they're a little bit larger perhaps, but people who are local are investing in this community. They see the value, and it certainly is part of the visitor experience that we talk about so much, right? We know that we depend on tourism for our local economy to thrive. And so they're wanting to have an experience that isn't cookie cutter and looks like every other town that they visit. And we have that, and it's something to really celebrate and embrace. So I think we're gonna be okay, but I definitely appreciate the comment that it's sad to see some local businesses now empty, and we're seeing the vacancies downtown. It's heartbreaking.
Yes, and I think you mentioned this, if not, it's something I've been talking about a lot in the last few weeks, is that COVID has just amplified a lot of pre-existing conditions, pre-existing health conditions, but also pre-existing economic conditions. The challenges of retail have just been amplified and all of those things. So, you know, I think some businesses, at least from what I've heard from them directly, they were considering closing anyway, right? And this has really made that clear for them and stuff like that. So that's one small part maybe of what's going on. But you're right, Bettina, I am a big fan of shopping locally. And
I am too.
I feel committed to it to the extent that I can. And so just reminded me though, that we do have a shop local program that we are about to really fully launch and amplify the local businesses. So we'll be spending a lot of resources and energy and staff time, et cetera, really with that program to amplify shopping locally. And that won't just be specific to the downtown, but it will definitely be heavily focused on the downtown. And also just wanted to mention with the Pilates instructor and those types of businesses, that we are working diligently on figuring out how to lift wellness businesses up out of their interior businesses and into our parks and into our open space and potentially into parking lots. So just by way of example, I was asked a friend of mine who is a pastor at one of the, has a church here with a really large parking lot, and trying to figure out how does it work, what needs to happen in order to provide that parking lot as a space for wellness businesses, exercise of various types. It's not going to be perfect for everyone, but it might work for some. And so we're really trying to be as creative and innovative and fluid as possible. And I would encourage everyone to do a little bit of research, look around at what has already been created in other communities and send those ideas to me. Like the Open Slow program, I mean, it's sort of a natural, but that came from community members sharing that idea that other cities had already adopted quite quickly, and we tried to adopt that as swiftly as possible based on community input. So my guess is that there are some really innovative ideas happening out there already, so we don't necessarily need to reinvent those wheels. So if you want to do a little investigation, and if you're a resident in the downtown, whatever the particular unique circumstances that you're under, check out what's going on in other communities and send those ideas my way. That is one of the main ways that I actually get great ideas and I'm able to facilitate them.
That's great. It looks like we have a question from Nathan.
Okay.
Nathan, if you can unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I've never Zoomed on my phone before. I'm not a business owner downtown, but I do own a local gym, and we're a smaller gym. We focus mostly on like martial arts and weightlifting. And for us, fortunately, in the first lockdown, I had spent most of last year trying to get stuff online, and so it was a pretty quick pivot for us to switch to online. But as Kira was saying earlier, you know, the people that are doing the trainings online and stuff like that, we're getting a percentage of what we were getting before with people coming in with in-person membership. And I'm having the same issue too with trying to negotiate rent, because the longer this goes on, everybody has been, fortunately, in San Luis Obispo, really supportive of the local businesses, and there have been plenty of people. I'm sure I know there's other like yoga studio owners and Pilates studio owners on here because I recognize some people, and hopefully you guys have had the same experience. But our memberships, for the most part, have stayed active just because people want us to be around when this is all over. But the longer this goes on and the more people are losing their employment and ending up stuck at home and realizing that they don't follow these online programs from home, the more we're kind of locked down, we're slowly seeing the membership drop away. And financially speaking, for like the stuff that we have to spend for rent and licensure and insurance and stuff like that, that's not going away. So it's making it more and more difficult every month to keep up with that.
So a couple things come to mind. One, I finally made the jump this past year and bought a year membership to my yoga studio. And I have thought since, like, okay, maybe I will never do that again because, now I'm not really going. But I love her. I go to the yoga standard. I also love the yoga center downtown too. I go to Boodaroo sometimes, so I get the martial arts piece. There's nothing I'd like more than to go back to Boodaroo and punch the bag as hard as I can. So that's super tough. I was talking to an owner of a studio, and she was in the middle of potentially transitioning into a new space and asking my opinion. And my sense is, without negotiating any kind of contract, you would have to negotiate your contract if it was new to say, basically, if I can't be open, I can't pay rent. And it would seem like if I'm a commercial business owner, that might be the best deal I can get. Now, if you're already in a agreement with somebody, I wonder a couple things. I mean, this is also tricky because, I get it. They're business people too, right? The commercial real estate folks. But I wonder if there isn't an opportunity then. What if, so I'm an organizer, I'm a community organizer. So I kind of come at it, some things through that lens. Is there an opportunity to join together, even just here in SLO? Forget the state and national level. What if all the wellness businesses, because they are you're getting slammed. Not only are you getting slammed, but also people really need those businesses in a major way right now. So what innovative solutions can we come up with to find you a space to work out in that's safe? And also, can you join together and come at your commercial business landlords as a joint, as essentially, it's like almost like a union kind of approach, and say, hey, there's 100, 200, I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of wellness businesses in SLO, and here's our proposal to all of the landlords in this community from the wellness community. That's just an idea. I don't know if it's a great one or if it's a legally viable one, but I think, as was noted earlier, that a lot of us are dealing with a lot of the challenges we're facing as one person. And if we join together, whether it's our own mental health or in your economic viability, it would be powerful to join with other business owners potentially. Because is that your main problem now, trying to either get out of or renegotiate your rent? Is that kind of what you're saying? Maybe we lost him.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Yeah, the hardest part has been negotiating rent, and just the fact that, even when we were open, we now have to limit the number of people that we're allowing in our facility, which actually I have no problem with. As soon as we opened, we changed everything to no contact. We made sure everybody was staying 6 feet apart. We made sure that we were following all the guidelines, but it does make it more difficult because we went to basically also having to limit our capacity to less than half of what it was before. And I mean, this was a personal decision on my part, but I believe that as owners in the fitness industry, part of our responsibility is to care about the health and well-being of our members, right? And so because of that, I mean, since we opened, we haven't had any outbreaks in our facility. So we know that the people that were current members have been coming in are not carrying
No,
infection.
yes, right now. I didn't start the video. I'm just listening.
And so for us, we also made the decision to not take in any new members because we wanted to make sure that we were keeping everybody in here safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm just talking a lot. But I guess my question is, what can be done to kind of help us with our current situation? And as far as transitioning to teaching at parks, is there any kind of permit or licensing that we need, some process that we need to go through for that? Or can we just show up at a park and start running classes?
So just showing up is not really a yes, but we are really actively forming that program right now and trying to make the least amount of barriers possible for folks. So there's a lot more details to that than I can provide you right now. But so if you can email me at the city, and all of the fitness folks, wellness folks, if you want to email me at the city, I can give you the current understanding of what we're planning on doing. And right now we're in it's just a week of transition, figuring that out and evolving it. But it's top of mind right after the downtown sort of parklets things that we're actively working on this week, is to focus on this exact problem and try and solve it to the best that we can. We can solve the getting outside to work out problem, I think, a lot easier than we can solve the negotiating with your particular landlord problem. So definitely contact me at the city, and I'll give you the current update on that. And I think within the next week, we'll have I hope, a streamlined process around exactly that.
And Heidi, we actually have a business owner and one of our downtown Slow board members, Stephanie Stackhouse from the Slow Yoga Center, on the call. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with this?
Yeah. Hey, Nathan. Yeah, happy to share. We have been doing yoga classes in the park Saturday and Sunday at Emerson Park near downtown. And we worked through Parks and Rec. Really simple process. You fill out just a few pieces of information. There's just an admin fee. And they have been so accommodating about allowing us to have a schedule. Since we had to shut down, we've actually added several more classes to our schedule that will be outside. So Greg Avakian with Slow Parks and Rec is the contact, and I can send you his email too. I'll find it and maybe put it in the chat here.
Yeah, can you do that if you don't mind?
Totally. Yeah,
it's good to
absolutely.
see you, by the way. I'm glad you guys are holding together.
Yeah. So yeah, it's hard because people were waiting, even though we switched to live stream, and some people were coming online. A lot of people were waiting to be able to get back in, and we had a week of goodness, and now we're closed again. But yeah, getting some things outside, I think, is pretty key, and we're fortunate here to have nice weather. And Greg, thank you so much. Good to see you too. He was nice to offer people that we do yoga for in the park a free orange juice or mimosa afterwards. So.
Oh yes, and I took full advantage of that outside yoga, and then went to Big Sky Cafe and definitely had a beautiful brunch outside and a pomegranate mimosa. It was a pretty great Sunday. And that's a great idea too. Like, how can we partner together more like that, and amplify all of our, partner with a few businesses to amplify all the work that the local businesses are doing. And just a small offering, I'm happy to share on social media too, on my own personal social media, any local business, and lift them up 100%. So you can always tag me in something, especially if you have when you just start offering outdoor classes, say, if you want to tag me, I'm happy to share that on Instagram, etc. And do anything I can in that way too, to lift up what you're doing.
So for example, I was planning to start, so the fitness classes have been easy, right? Because we can just move it into the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have plenty of space in the parking lot. It's really the martial arts classes that we're trying to figure out. But I was planning to just start running them at Meadow Park, which was why I was asking about like permission and permits and stuff like that. I wasn't sure what the process
Well,
was.
to be honest, I mean, I'm sure it really, you know, are we in the parks, saying, hey, is this a fitness class and you didn't sign up? No. But like Stephanie at Yoga Center, there was a lot of people out there. It was clearly like an organized event. So, you have to use your own discernment. If you wanted to do, I'm sure, obviously, if you wanted to do a private lesson in the park, I think that's probably completely fine. If you really want to start offering classes on a regular basis, then that's something that you do want to contact the city about and just establish.
Yeah, Nathan, I know Equilibrium Fitness, I think, is doing classes in Meadow Park. So you just want to reserve your spot, but it's
Well, we're
really
just going to
simple.
push them out of the park. No, I'm just
You're
kidding.
the one guy, so that'll work out great. I have heard, just as an aside, I haven't heard any movement towards this at all, but several parents have emailed me to say, hey, in Northern Europe, they're doing school outside during COVID. And now that San Luis Coastal has decided to remain closed until winter, I have not heard. They're just so overwhelmed with their process, I'm sure, right now. But like all of these things are outside in the realm of things that are happening, and this is a very quickly moving, fluid situation. So all that is to say, I would definitely contact Parks and Rec and establish yourself there, because I think all the fitness businesses are going to be moving to the outside, and then maybe some schools might consider utilizing the outdoor space as well.
We have a few more questions lined up, and I do want to be mindful of the fact that it's 6:26. We can hang out and talk for as long as you like. But
I mean, I technically have a meeting at 6:30, but I'm happy to run over and take those questions, and then I'll say goodnight.
Great. We have Dominic was up next.
Hello, it's nice to see everybody on here. I'm Dominic, co-owner of Bliss Cafe. I wanted to touch on two different things. One, going back to something you brought up, Heidi. Thanks for hosting this, by the way. This is super cool. It's nice to see all the people engaged. But you mentioned like working on a local market integration on your end. What were you referencing with that?
Well, I'm not actively working on that. That is my dream, though, that we would have a real market in the downtown. I think that's a lot of people's desire. And that's, as Bettina was saying, that's one of the things that really establishes a downtown as a business and residentially oriented space, which also goes a long way in terms of mitigating some of the challenges in not having residents in downtown. So that's not a project that I can take on or that the city can take on. That's just a project that I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, the good news is there's a group of people taking it on right now, and they're doing it completely digitally. It's called Harvestly. If there's any local producers, like kind of artisan foods and goods, I recommend checking out the website Harvestly. They're local. They're like partially Cal Poly, partially successful entrepreneurs, all getting together to make an integrated network of local farmers. And me at Bliss Cafe, I'm trying to work with them to see how we can increase our amount of inputs to reach a number of 70% local with agricultural produce. So yeah, I actually wanted to, when we speak sometime this week, I think Dara set that up with us. I wanted to actually introduce you with their president. But they're a really cool project, and they're just promoting local agriculture from Paso to Tuscadero to San Luis Obispo. My second question is, it's a bit more grave in nature. I'm kind of with you on a bit more of a pessimistic perspective of what the next year to 2 years looks like. And the conversation about rent is really interesting. Like, as we start to push on and there are fewer and fewer jobs, and if it does go that way and people start to not being able to afford the lifestyle, and yeah, potentially these people from the Bay Area or from Los Angeles also begin moving in and being pushed out. Like, when does it get real, and when do we support community, which is local, over like economic logics of a neoclassical system? That's like a really hard question. That's probably one of the most real questions we could ask here. But the same is like for food, you know, in the next 1 to 2 years, what really happens with COVID, we don't know. But like, I feel like the hardest question we could ask ourselves is, you know, if economic logics lead multinational food distribution or regional food distribution to take food out of the county to those who can pay, and if the locals here can't afford to even pay their rents because national interests take precedence, when does like politically and governmentally do we step in and stop that? I don't really know if you have an answer, but even if you just have contours of an answer, I'm so
Well,
interested.
thank you as always to asking the big questions. I feel like that question, the answer to that question is probably PhD thesis level answer that you could give. But I think maybe just briefly, I would say that you're absolutely right. That, as I said before, like COVID is amplifying a lot of these pre-existing conditions about health, income inequality, racism, all of these things, right? And so all of this is really coming up strongly right now. And it is really providing us a choice. Like, how do we want to live? What's working and what isn't working? And why do we keep kind of buying into a system that creates such a strong difference between so-called winners and losers? And now that more and more people are bumping up against these challenges, what are we going to do about it? And, you know, I actually just recently signed on to a group with other mayors that are interested in looking at basic income ideas. Like, so the mayor of Stockton is one of the first cities in the United States to offer a universal basic income to some of their community members, for example. They have a very different situation in Stockton than we do here. But nevertheless, you know, like Andrew Yang, if you'll recall, when he was running for president, you know, he was really great at addressing this inevitability that because of technology, because of all of these market forces, et cetera, so many people are being shut out of the economy and becoming irrelevant. Well, what do we do? So I don't know that we look at universal basic income here in SLO, or how we would even go about creating the funding for that and all of those things. But that's just one line of thinking that's happening right now. But you're right, like the bigger question is the economy working in general? And if it isn't, and I think most people would agree that it isn't, then this predates COVID. What are the solutions to that? And how do we sort of, to me, it's also about culture shift, you know. Again, in the American culture has very much been about the individual, the bootstrapper, the you know, the manifest destiny, the me, mine, and my will, my all this sort of thing. And I think we're really butting up against the limitations of that. We're butting up against the limitations of that with COVID for sure, but also let's not forget that actually the big looming threat that hasn't been talked about in the last 6 months is our climate crisis, right? And so we have climate, we have racial injustice, and we have COVID all sort of coalescing at once. And, you know, my work has really led me to a more spiritual understanding of what's happening right now, and that we all have to, I think we're being called to recognize that we are deeply, deeply interconnected, and our fates are tied. And so, as you're saying, you know, the community, like how do we get more community focused truly? And what does that actually look like in terms of policies that a city might pursue, but also in terms of practices that businesses might facilitate too? So that is a really big question. And you know, you have all my contact information. I'd love to come over to Bliss and have a Buddha bowl and talk about it more. Because I think that actually is the big question that we're all really up against.
Yeah, and I don't want to be so hardcore pessimistic, but it's like it would be folly to not look at the most dark space this could go to. And honestly, the answers we find there are probably ones that we should have already been looking at. And just like from the type of interconnection that's happened in this Zoom chat, I wonder, like, maybe you've already done this, but like multi-facet stakeholder groups, like what happens when you put together like a renter and like the person, the landlord, and a business owner and a politician together, all that are like nonpartisan with each other's issues. And how do you track the end point of the conflict? And say, how do we solve this with the full coalescence of government, business, and civil like servants? Yeah.
Well, and how do we just have a fully human conversation about these things? You know, business owners, right? I mean, small business owners are, I think, you know, it's this more like major corporation kind of idea that profit, profit, profit. And what's happening here on this call is a totally, my sense is a totally different orientation to what it is to be in business and why you're in business, you know? Like we've heard from someone who was an attorney and now is leading this Pilates business. My guess is, and I don't know you personally or your story, but I'm imagining that, you know, being an attorney didn't fulfill you, right? And somehow you had a nexus with Pilates, and then that ended up being your dream, right? And now you're really living a more fully human life, really pursuing things that actually have deep meaning for you. And it's evolved into a business. And you deeply care about what you're doing, and you deeply care about your customers. And so how can we have more of that, where business isn't the enemy or the full solution, but business at just and every other, and governance too, is coming at all of these things from a fully human perspective. And you know, land ownership is tricky when you get into this, and the folks that own these buildings and own these homes. You know, can we have a robust, meaningful conversation where we also hear their pain points and see if there isn't some way to move them to a deeper understanding about how they can show up in this moment that also, I think, honestly, would economically behoove them as well. You know, there's no way people are going to be able to pay their rents. That's just so deeply real that there almost really isn't a negotiation about that, right? People are just going to end up going bankrupt and walking away, or whatever mechanism is going to happen. And then that landowner isn't going to, you know, be in any kind of better situation. So I would be happy to be part of those conversations. And again, I would just harken back to Slow Solutions, who does a beautiful job of helping negotiate those kind of conversations in a really constructive and positive way.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, call me or reach out to me. I'll come by. I'll come by.
This is such an extraordinary conversation. Thank you all for bringing up these giant questions and topics that are so important to our future. We have one final question, I believe.
Okay.
So we're going to call on Renelle. Thanks for being patient. Renelle, you have the floor.
Hi. Nice for you to be here, Mayor Harmon, and I appreciate your opinions and direction that you give our city. And you actually were a speaker at my Rotary group, not pre-COVID, and appreciated your time there as well.
Thank you.
My question really resonates in the fact that I definitely can understand your positioning on, you know, the concerns of our climate, the concerns of diversity in our city. But me being a business owner, I own a medical company. I have a business location just one block from downtown on Monterey Street in the Heritage Plaza. I have many friends in downtown San Luis Obispo that have businesses as well that have been affected with the same issues that I have, and that's the increased difficulty of having homeless be violent in nature. I had one evening where I had to call the police 2 different times, one banging on my door, and it was very alarming because I was here alone as a woman. I have a very good friend downtown that owns Ambiance clothing store, and I've been in her location actually shopping and seen homeless people come into her business. And at one point, even one gentleman being very sexual, I won't say specifically what he was doing, but he ended up being arrested. Very concerned about what the city is really doing to refocus its efforts on the safety of keeping our customers and keeping us as business owners safe in our places of business and wanting to stay and be here. Do you have some comments on
that? You know, this is actually, to me, feels like one of the most challenging things that we have to solve, and the complexities around people living on shelters are just so vast and wide. The legal complexities alone, right? So what our officers can and can't do, or can do, is actually fairly limited. And our resources are also limited. We actually do a lot on homelessness, but when you're in the downtown, you wouldn't necessarily know that, right? I think we put almost $1 million towards the shelter. We recently, through Transitions Mental Health, have hired 2 years ago now a social worker to work with the police force downtown in particular, to have a more meaningful nexus with folks that are living unsheltered. And the problem just keeps growing. It's growing all over the country, and especially in the state of California. And so we know that this is a challenge that we all need to be doing more on. But I can tell you that we spend more out of our general fund than the county does on homelessness. And so I think this is a it's kind of issue where we need to really recognize which layer of government is in many ways charged with the solution for this, and advocate at that right place. And so from my perspective, the county needs to be doing more on this issue in our downtown. San Luis Obispo City is the center of the county. It's the county seat. We have the most thriving downtown. We have the shelter here, so we have a lot of unsheltered folks here. They're coming here because of the downtown, because that's where they can ask folks for money and all of those related issues. And the county, I think, really needs to step up and do more on addressing unsheltered people in the downtown specifically, but also all of the other issues that folks are dealing with: mental health, substance misuse issues, and all of that. And so, yes, I would continue to reach out to the city to see what more we can do. We are looking at CARES Act funding, and also with our potential ballot initiative of Slow Forward, with if we can get access to more funding, we could utilize some of that funding, both for, we're thinking of small business loans and grants as a potential part of that funding, but also more funding to go to addressing the situation that you're talking about. And that's all real and needs to happen. And we also need to advocate at the county and the state level to ensure that we have the resources to engage on this really challenging issue. You know, I hear you about the safety. You know, as a woman, I haven't dealt with that myself. It was, seems like ages ago, but you know, in January, I have a stalker, and he jumped into the city hall and attacked my staff, and was arrested, and I have a restraining order against him. And we believe that he is in the unsheltered population. So I have experienced that firsthand, the dangers that folks who are living with unsupported mental health and substance misuse issues. And so those are things that we definitely need to do better as a whole community. And one of the challenges is that you're in the city of San Luis Obispo. So the assumption is that it's the city of San Luis Obispo's issue to solve in totality. And while we definitely have some responsibility there, there's no doubt about that. There's also no doubt about the fact that the county, I think, really needs to step up and do more. So I have a meeting coming up with Supervisor Arnold and a downtown business owner and some folks from my staff about this very issue. And so hopefully we can start that conversation and encourage the county to sort of recommit themselves to doing more. I think sometimes the supervisors at the county level, on all sides of the political spectrum, you know, I don't get the sense, and I don't even mean this as a criticism. You know, they have big jobs, they have big districts, and I think that there's an assumption maybe on their part that the city, the downtown in particular, but maybe the city of San Luis Obispo in general, is sort of off their radar and isn't necessarily one of their priorities. They're probably mostly engaging in the unincorporated areas of our county. And so hopefully we can invite them to remember that the city of San Luis Obispo and the downtown in particular is absolutely part of their districts and jurisdictions, and we really need their support also to do a lot more meaningful help and resource allocation to engaging on this topic.
Yes, thank you for that. And I would just like to chime in here and say that I serve on the Homeless Services Oversight Council with the County of San Luis Obispo. I am the business representative. There's a designated business person. And I joined that group about 8 months ago because I see firsthand what is happening in our downtown every day. And the county definitely could allocate some more resources to these downtown services. So that's definitely the correct place to do the advocacy work. And it's been very interesting to see the resources pour in because of COVID. There, for years, people would say, oh, there just aren't enough resources to provide services for people who desperately need them. And all of a sudden, those resources are materializing. Yet we continue to see this disparity between those who are experiencing severe mental illness and have enormous problems and are unwilling to be helped in many cases. And then people who are sort of on the brink of experiencing homelessness. And it's part of that larger conversation about the economy and what we've been talking about all along, right? So we don't want to have the economy deteriorate more and result in even more of these people who are struggling and making our streets so challenging.
Well, thank you for that clarity. And I actually live in Debbie Arnold's district and have had really great feedback from her. I actually know about the meeting that you're about to have with her as well, and the other business owner, and hope to potentially be there, because I live in her district, yet my business is slightly in Adam Hill's district, and I haven't necessarily gotten the feedback and the support from Supervisor Hill's positioning, but I definitely have really appreciated the added information and further, I would say, clarity from Supervisor Arnold. So I'll really be more interested to hear more of what you have to say, Mayor Harmon, at that meeting if I am able to be present. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much. All right, Bettina, is that good night?
I think so, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so happy to come back anytime, really. I don't know, whatever feels most beneficial to the downtown business community. I'm once a month. I don't know, as COVID is so challenging, if every couple of weeks, but maybe once a month. I'm completely happy to come. It's so good for me to hear what's going on for people. And I think, as people have noted on the call too, I think it's really good for us all to hear from each other. Again, as more of a community organizing kind of background, this is exactly how you make change, is really engaging, building relationships, having real conversations, partnering to amplify the solutions that I think we're all looking for. So thank you for the opportunity, and happy to come back.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night. Stay well.
Thank you.